Hi, I'm Jack Easthope, reg number 196363. This is my video log in relation to skills versus capacities during locomotion. Limiting factors of skill during locomotion could be rhythm, timing, technique, flexion extension biases, or timing contractions of muscles could also prevent skill execution during locomotion. In relation towards limitations of capacities during locomotion, muscles, tendons, ligaments, tissue quality and quantity must all be considered. During locomotion, it must also be noted that skills and capacities can both prevent force production. The speed drill I will be presenting is the A-skip. The A-skip is an exercise used to teach recovery of the free limb. A high foot recovery of the ankle crossing over the knee replicates the same position used during top speed running. The agility drill in which I'm displaying is a side shuffle into acceleration. The side shuffle connects a lateral shuffle into a 90-degree turn before linearly accelerating. The advantageous aspect of this drill is the side position, allowing scanning of all information during gameplay. Athlete A is new to this movement, hence numerous complications with her skill execution, timing, rhythm, and general fluidity of the movement. Although my biggest concern is her hip flexion bias and lack of intention during her hip extension as she makes contact with the ground. As you can see here, athlete A's hip flexion is well over 90 degrees. Also, her foot is flat during ground contact. The excessive hip flexion leads to poor stability of the core, resulting in lumbar flexion. Evidently, this will lead to lack of force production and a leakage of power. By implementing some ankling drills, which we then progressed into a pogo drill, we taught the athlete how to improve her ground contact through an active flat foot. The dorsiflexion of the ankle and pre-stretch of the associated muscles helped incur a stretch shortening cycle to improve the power output during ground contact. The gap between the heel and the floor shows the foot is active during the movement. To balance out the hip flexion bias, we used a wall drill, encouraging the athlete to drive down with her leg and returning back to 90 degrees in her hip. This also allowed the acquired skill of the active flat foot to be incorporated into a triple flexion extension pattern. Through good practice, the flexion extension pattern improved massively, not only through the ground contact of the active flat foot, but also due to the ankle cross from a better flexion pattern. You can see here the knee is now at 90 degrees, resulting in a much more stable core position. Through the use of these exercise interventions, you can see the skill of this movement has improved massively. Through better timing, rhythm and coordination, force production will have also increased. Athlete B displays poor force production during her A-skip. Assessments found a knee valgus present in her left hip due to poor muscle quality and quantity of associated muscles. Initially, from a lateral view, the athlete's execution of the A-skip looks fair, although you can see from a closer view, her ankle cross is slightly below the knee. As you assess this movement from an anterior view, you can see a knee valgus is present, displaying 107 degrees of a quad angle. Using a rotational screen, you can see the athlete had very poor left rotation. She has excessive right rotation due to the internal rotation of her left hip. With considerations towards the knee valgus, this made me concerned with the function of her left hip external rotation. By using manual muscle tests, I found a weak glute max and a very powerful glute medius. Therefore, using some self-myofascial release, I downregulated the function of the glute medius to then help upregulate the function of the glute max, helping improve the quality of the muscles while balancing out the quantity of the muscle. During the rescreen, you can see the athlete's rotational bias is is much more balanced. Additional external rotation of the left hip due to better glute function. You can also see better internal rotation of the right hip. When reassessing the A-skip from an anterior view, you can see much better alignment in the sagittal plane. The left leg now displays a much better quad angle and doesn't present a knee valgus. Through better muscle quality and quantity of the left hip, mobility and stability has helped improve force production, resulting in a better ankle cross and recovery of the free limb. Although athlete A is strong and robust with good power output, his turning to acceleration needs improving. The biggest skill deficit I see is the rotation of his head and trunk as he transitions from his lateral shuffle into his turn to linear acceleration. As the athlete starts his lateral shuffle, you can see his head is down. As he turns, although he opens his hip, his head and torso are still facing the opposite direction. We regress this movement into a 90-degree turn into acceleration. Without the side shuffle, the athlete had more time and space to cue his head and therefore his torso into the intended direction of travel. A lower body position also allowed the athlete to orientate his body angle better. To help athlete A improve his body angle better, we incorporated a plyo step, helping increase force production as he pushed the floor away. At the same time, we encouraged him to continue using the visual cue to turn his body and torso in the direction of travel. Once the athlete returned back to the full movement with the side shuffle, you can see the visual cue helped him turn his body much better. As you can see on the clip in the right, even though the athlete comes into the screen much later, his body still turns to his right much faster. Athlete B shows a lack of rotational core strength, preventing him from turning into his direction of travel. Here, as the athlete side shuffles, you can see as he attempts his turn, he becomes too upright too soon, hence the vertical line. He opens his hip before turning his head and his torso, meaning he's working distally to proximally, leaking power from the core. This pattern also occurs that his trail leg doesn't produce force rapidly enough. You see this again from an anterior view. His hip opens before his torso and head turn, and therefore his trail leg is left way too far behind him. We tried to regress this movement to help improve some of the skill sets of this movement before assuming it was all capacity based. Although you can see the athlete again doesn't initiate movement from the trail leg and the toe off, his head is still down, he opens his hip before turning his torso, and therefore as he initiates his run, he becomes too upright way too soon. To help improve the function of his rotational power, while building some muscle mass in his obliques, we used a rotational wall ball. This also helped with a visual cue, not to mention a triple extension pattern of his trail leg. To improve his triple extension pattern further, we used split jumps. Due to the ballistic nature of this movement, it would have also helped improve the strength of the tendon and ligaments in relation to the associated tissues. Combined, this allowed the athlete to turn his body in his direction of travel much faster. With the incorporation of a plyo step, he can now utilize his triple extension pattern much better. Not to mention, his body angle improved due to the rotation of his trunk happening before the opening of his hip. When incorporating these changes back into the full movements, you can see the improved capacity of muscle tissues, ligaments and tendons allow the athlete to push off better, improving his rotation and body orientation. I found the importance of the core function played a huge part within the context of this project. Although one of the biggest insights in which I gained from working on this project was the difference between skill and capacity in relation to exercises in the weights room versus exercises of locomotion. In the weights room, I found capacities would inhibit skill, and without improving capacities, skill execution would become very challenging. Whereas with locomotion, if you improved skills, I found sometimes you would also improve capacity.